Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Monday. It means we're brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. Hope your work week is off to a good start. First real full work week of the year. First real full work week in the last 3 weeks for a lot of folks. So glad you're hanging out with us here on this Monday. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos, and loads to get to. LSU Hoops falls on Saturday. We're talking about it. LSU's hosting a couple of defensive backs this week. We'll talk about that as well. Got reaction to the first Saturday in SEC basketball action, and a little intimidating. I'll be pretty honest with you. It was a little intimidating. We'll talk about it. I've got a story up at LouisianaSports.net about the season-long pro football focus grades of the LSU Tigers. We'll dive into a little bit of that. Denton Day in his normal Monday spot at the bottom of hour number 2. We'll talk Commanders with Denton, as well as the college football playoff coming up later this week. So fired up for all of it. Thanks for being with us here on this Monday. We'll start today same way we start every day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
The Saints season mercifully came to an end on Sunday in Tampa. It was a game that Tampa desperately needed to try to win and get into the playoffs. Turns out they didn't when the dust settled because the Falcons couldn't beat Carolina, but it appeared at the time that Tampa needed that game, and we're obviously going to give the Saints everything they wanted, and the Saints were just trying to play out the string here and see what they could do, and it turns out the Saints came out and played hard. They really did. They had a 2-score lead in the second half of the football game. I thought that Spencer Rattler looked good in the first half, looked comfortable in the first half. He did not turn the ball over, led some scoring drives. They weren't able to get touchdowns as often as I think they probably wanted to, but they were able to put some points on the board, and you look up and you got a 16-6 lead. I thought Rattler was a positive in the majority of this game, and I was kind of looking for positives before we get into the big picture stuff, as you well know. I thought Juwan Johnson had a really nice day on Sunday. He goes 6 catches for 80 yards. Actually had a nifty little move, make some guys miss, get up the field. And that's a guy that the Saints, I don't think, utilized as well as they could have this year. He and Foster Moreau, especially when you started losing your weapons on the outside. You got those two guys who've been pretty productive, and I just didn't think they were quite involved enough. Juwan Johnson certainly was on Sunday. Blake Grupe capped off what was a really nice year for Blake Grupe. He goes 4 for 4 on field goals. For the season, he was 27 of 31, and under 50 yards, he was 21 out of 23. That's good stuff. We know how quickly kickers got cycled through for a lot of the Peyton era. He kind of settled on Will Lutz, and then Lutz gets hurt, and he's kind of not what he used to be. And you kind of decide you're going to move on, and you go to this young rookie in Grupe last year, and that was a little uneven, if we're being honest. But this year, I thought he stepped up and really had a nice season, and that was capped with, again, a 4 for 4 effort in the game yesterday. And then I thought Jordan Howard made a nice play on the ball coming up for that interception. The Saints looked like they had a real chance to win the game, and I will give huge credit to Baker Mayfield for making 4 consecutive big-time 3rd and 4th down plays, extending drives. I mean, the touchdown pass he threw in the right corner of the end zone was a rocket down the right sideline, and then he takes off on a long 3rd down and runs for it up the middle of the field. I thought he did a really, really good job, and I'll be honest, as I'm watching Baker Mayfield play, it kind of looked like what a good version of Spencer Rattler could theoretically be. Now, it took Baker Mayfield a long time to mature into a good quarterback in the league, but maybe it's the pedigree, a little bit undersized, played for Lincoln Riley, threw for a lot of college yards. I'm not sure exactly, but obviously you had Mayfield as the first pick in the draft, and then you took Rattler in the 5th round. They're not the same in that way, but it's a good athlete with a big arm, not necessarily elite size, and came from kind of the same college system, and Mayfield has turned himself into a quality NFL quarterback. Could Spencer Rattler do that? I don't know. It's not really my job to know. The guy whose job it is to know is whoever takes the reins of the New Orleans Saints moving forward. And that is, quite frankly, what we're here to talk about. And I think anyone who's watched this over the last 2 months would suggest that Darren Rizzi made some changes when he came in. He stemmed the tide. They go out and they beat the Falcons at home in his first week. They beat the Browns. You do lose to the Rams, but you come back and go to New York and get a win. And all of a sudden, Darren Rizzi has won 3 of his 4 games as the interim coach. And at that point, it stands to reason, okay, let's look at this and see what he's doing right, and can he sustain this and get an opportunity to be the next head coach. And then you lose your last 4. And you got clipped in a real close one against Washington. You go to Green Bay in the freezing cold and get absolutely annihilated. And I thought the final nail in Darren Rizzi's head coaching coffin was the loss to the Raiders, where you really weren't all that competitive with a bad football team. And that's pretty evident. You play out the string against Tampa, and the guys played hard, and credit to them. But I don't think there's anybody who realistically is looking at this situation and going, Darren Rizzi needs to be the guy. There's got to be wholesale changes made. And here is where I'll kind of start with that, because we're going to talk about this for a couple of weeks until they do make this hire. Where I would start is whoever comes in to be the new head coach of the Saints needs to be given a lot of authority on how things work. Because the current administration, sans Sean Payton, in my estimation, has garnered almost no goodwill here. Like there is so much broken with this team, from the structure of the salary cap to the draft selections to the depth on the roster. The whole thing is busted. And whoever's next needs to be given his opportunity to fix it his way. And that's a very difficult thing to do when you start looking at pay grades with NFL executives and egos, and then you look around and you realize that a couple of guys in that front office were there when the Saints won a Super Bowl, and you're kind of going, well, these guys, and that needs to be the furthest thing from anyone in New Orleans' mind. The 2009 Super Bowl does not need to be on anybody's mind. The Nola no call needs to be on no one's mind. This is miles from that. And the new coach needs to be the guy with the loudest voice in the room. That's very difficult for people in those positions. When I'm talking about Mickey Loomis and Dennis Lauscha and Kai Harley and Gail Benson and that whole group that's there, it's very difficult for those people to say, hey, this is the new guy. How can we help you? And that's what needs to happen. And it's not going to be Darren Rizzi, and reports are starting to surface now about who the Saints potentially would like to interview. Aaron Glenn being reported by Adam Schefter. You saw Matt Nagy's name come up from Diana Rossini on Saturday. And while I have my thoughts on those 2 candidates, and we'll assess all the candidates moving forward, what's more important to me than the actual candidate, whoever it is what that candidate's allowed to do when that candidate becomes the head coach. That's the baseline for this whole thing. Because the guy that takes this job needs to have the loudest voice in the room. My understanding, certainly I can't report it because I'm not there and I wasn't covering the team. My understanding is Sean Payton's voice is pretty damn loud. Now, he's a great coach, gotten the Broncos into the playoffs here with a rookie quarterback, but he wasn't a great coach. No one knew that when he got here. And all of a sudden, you get that respect. The new guy needs to have it. Because I don't think that Mickey Loomis and Dennis Lauscha and Kai Harley and the whole group, Ireland, and the whole group that have gotten the Saints into this mess need to be the leading force in getting them out of the mess. And if this doesn't reinforce that it's a mess, I don't know what does, because this was a disaster of a football season. You lose 7 games in a row in the middle of the season. You lose 5 out of 6 to finish the season. It was terrible. And I don't want to point to injuries because everyone's got them. And I don't want to point to the quarterback because that happens. I want to point to the entirety of the body of work of this organization over the last 4 years, and it stinks. So the new person who wasn't a part of all this needs to be the one to fix it. And they can decide what they think of Derek Carr, and they can decide what they think of Spencer Rattler, and they can decide who they think should be drafted. That's what needs to happen. That's the pushing off point for this entire deal. We will take the next week to assess candidates as they become reported. You've got a lot of the league that just finished their season, and as the weeks go on, 1-2 weeks, you're going to have very, very few coaches that are still working. And the groundwork should have been laid on this for months. You fired Dennis Allen after you lost at the Panthers at the beginning of November. He was let go November the 4th. It is now January the 6th. You have had 2 months to get this list together. So there should be a system in place, names on that list, interviews being conducted when that time comes, and the hire made with some efficiency here, I guess is the word I'm looking for. I don't know why I would trust him at this point, but with some efficiency. And at that point, I'll start to talk about this guy and that guy and that guy, and that's when we'll get to it. But I think the most important thing to get to, as we now are in the offseason and can comfortably talk about where this organization goes going forward, it needs to be on the back of the next guy who's the head coach of the Saints. Whether or not that's going to happen, I don't have any idea. My confidence level, kind of low. But it's the way that I feel it should be done. And we'll see. We'll have press conferences. Darren Rizzi meeting with the media today. And then we'll hear from the Saints brass as time goes on. But really, that's the key here, is only time is going to tell. But thankfully, it's all in the rearview mirror. And an organization that is stuck with continuity and stuck with the same people and same processes needs to blow that whole thing up. And this has to be evidence of that. Saints will pick 9th in the upcoming draft. That draft, pretty important. So you want to read some of our Saints content, you can always do it at LouisianaSports.net. Our Saints content here on the Hunt Palmer Show, Hunt on Saints on YouTube, or wherever you find your podcast. And, of course, that was our Genesis opening drive here on this Monday. When we come back, LSU stumbles out of the gates in SEC basketball play. I've got some significant thoughts on that as the Vanderbilt Commodores came to town and took LSU down. LSU in Missouri tomorrow. So let's talk some hoops when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com. Every car online is on the lot. Every car on the lot is online. That's at genesisofbatonrouge.com. You may not be all that familiar with Genesis, and that's okay because they hadn't been around, certainly not at this location here in Baton Rouge, very long. But if you check them out, Airline at Pico, I promise you, you will not regret it. Most people who are in the market for a vehicle in Baton Rouge are on Airline Highway. Just make one more stop at Genesis. You're going to see a luxury line of vehicles, incredible safety features. They're sleek, they're comfortable, they're stylish, and the folks that work over there at Genesis of Baton Rouge are just phenomenal to deal with. Their brand ambassadors are first class. It's not going to be a pushy, salesy experience. They're just there to help, and they're willing to leave the lot to do that. They'll come to you, allow you to test drive a vehicle. They'll come to you at the office. They'll come to you at home. You get behind the wheel, you see the difference in driving that Genesis. As I mentioned, they're all online at genesisofbatonrouge.com, genesisofbatonrouge.com, the only fully exclusive Genesis dealer in the state right here in Baton Rouge. Check them out online, genesisofbatonrouge.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
All your printing, scanning, copying needs, Gulf Coast Office Products, gcopnet.com, gcopnet.com. LSU and Vanderbilt Saturday afternoon inside the PMAC. Tigers lose it 80-72. And it played out exactly as I feared. Well, I say that. Not exactly as I feared. And I'll get into why I fear that and what was a little bit different here in this segment. But it was a really, really disappointing and disheartening loss for this LSU basketball team, because this is one you feel like you could have won. And quite frankly, you let LSU come in, you let Vanderbilt come in and run their playbook. On Friday, I previewed this game, and I gave you kind of my biggest fear, and I gave you why I thought Vanderbilt had the record they had and how well they had played. And this is what I had to say on Friday's show, previewing LSU and Vanderbilt. And meanwhile, while Vanderbilt does such a good job of turning people over, they don't turn it over a lot. They're 7th in the nation in turnover rate offensively. And so when you only turn the ball over on 13% of your possessions, you become a beast in terms of turnover margin, and they're 5th in the country in turnover margin. What that does is it allows you to outshoot in terms of the volume of the shots your opponent. And when I looked at Vanderbilt's stat sheet, it checks out because they have attempted about 80 more shots than their opponents, and they've attempted about 80 more threes than their opponents. And it just stands to reason, if you get 80 more shots up than your opponents, you're going to outscore your opponents significantly. That's the statistic. And now, as I come back here to Monday's show, that's exactly what happened in terms of shot disparity. LSU outshot Vanderbilt percentage-wise. LSU in the game shot 50%. Vanderbilt in the game shot 44%. But Vanderbilt took 64 shots to LSU's 48. That is a 16-shot disparity. You cannot overcome that. You can't. And I feared it would be on the turnovers, which in the first half it was. LSU turned the ball over 11 times in the first half. That resulted in 15 Vanderbilt points. Vanderbilt turned the ball over 3 times in the first half. So that is exactly what I was talking about on Friday that you could not do. However, LSU cleaned it up in the second half. They only turned the ball over 4 times in the second half, and they shot it pretty well. But you dug yourself a hole. You were behind double digits most of the first half. And your biggest bugaboo came back to bite you. And while I can pat myself on the back all I want for Friday's show, talking about Vanderbilt and their shot disparity and how that did play out, I'm incorrect in the sense that it wasn't just off of turnovers. Vanderbilt annihilated LSU on the backboard. Keep in mind, Vanderbilt, who comes in by a large amount the shortest team in the Southeastern Conference, comes in and annihilates you on the backboard. The tallest starter that Vanderbilt has is 6'7". They got 17 offensive rebounds. 17 offensive rebounds. They turned those into 18 second chance points. LSU, second chance points, 4. So not only did you turn the ball over too often, but you allowed the smallest team in the conference to go nuts on the glass. And because of that, they got 16 more field goal attempts than you did and 1 more free throw. Simply not going to be a reasonable path to victory when that's the case. And I will credit LSU for coming back and playing hard. And look, it was on the back of Cam Carter, who was great in the second half early to claw LSU all the way back, hit 4 threes, including one with 8 minutes to go to tie the game. But from that point where he hit the 3 to tie the game until there were 6 seconds left in the game, he did not score because he has to shoulder just about all the scoring load for this team. Meanwhile, A.J. Hogard, who is a Michigan State transfer to Vanderbilt, took over in the second half. And there was a series where Vanderbilt got 5 points on 2 missed free throws. Well, how do you do that? Well, one, they got a free throw and they missed it. They got the offensive rebound on a free throw block out, kicked it out, buried a 3. Then they came back down on a foul, missed the front end of a 1-to-1, LSU lane violation. He hits 2. That's 5 points on 2 missed free throws because you don't block out on the first one and you have a lane violation on the second one. Unacceptable. Free throw block out, they give you position. You just have to take it. And LSU didn't do it. And Vanderbilt made the plays they needed to down the stretch to win it, and LSU did not. And LSU came out ill-prepared and didn't execute against Vanderbilt's pressure defense and couldn't rebound. And because of that, all of these things add up, and you lose the ball game. This was disheartening for 2 reasons. 2 reasons to me. One, you had a chance to win a game on your home floor. You're in a tie game, 8 minutes to go on your home floor. You've got the momentum. You're on the run, and you lose the game. That's disheartening in itself. In a vacuum, just that game, it's disheartening that you lost the game because you had a chance to win it. The other piece to this is that it's impossible to look around the league and watch these teams play and then look at LSU and certainly look at Vanderbilt and think, well, these are clearly 2 of the lesser teams in the league. And you had them on your home floor and you let it get away And so big picture, just outside of the one game, the last 8 minutes, big picture, you look at this and you go, this does not bode well for the next 17 games. It just simply doesn't. I was chatting with multiple people in the PMAC an hour before LSU and Vanderbilt even tipped off. And we were talking about Kentucky and Florida. We were talking about Tennessee. We were talking about Alabama. And then Alabama played later and scored 107 points. And you look at this game and you're just like, man, this looks like a little different level basketball than that, quite frankly. And so for me as an analyst, certainly as a fan, but as an analyst to sit back and look at this, it would be disingenuous for me to tell you that there's a very positive outlook here. LSU has no ability to throw the ball down in the block and create any sort of offense because Damian Collins and Corey Chess really don't have that in their game. We knew that, but it reared its ugly head. You're relying 100% on the guards to do all the creating and all the scoring, and that's a heavy workload. Victorious Miller has been somebody that stepped up and helped you score. He was completely lost in this game. He had 3 turnovers in his 12 and a half minutes. He took one shot. It was a rushed 3 that he didn't make. The turnovers were ugly. He was kind of lost and jumped in the air under the basket one time and just kind of like flipped it to no one. Like the game was too fast for him. And so you're looking at your lineups and you're going, okay, well, Collins can't really help me offensively. And you look at Chest, who's not really a force on the offensive end. And Victorious Miller wasn't ready to play on Saturday. Jai Bailey's not going to shoot the ball for you. He guy that shoots a bunch of layups. He went 4 or 5 from the floor. That's what he does. And you start to realize, well, I can't really give the ball to Robert Miller on the block. He doesn't score and hasn't all year. And Curtis Givens hasn't shown himself to be able to really shoot the ball, although he did do a better job of distributing against some of the lesser teams on LSU's lineup. And Derek Fountain only played a minute and a half. So I've just listed the whole team besides Jordan Sears and Cam Carter. Those guys are essentially having to do everything. I don't think that because they had to do it all on Saturday means that on March the 1st, they're going to have to do everything. You can develop as a team. But the way it's constituted right now, as I look at LSU and I watch them play an SEC game on Saturday, they're really limited. They don't have enough scoring options. They don't have a post scoring option. They cannot do things they need to do on the defensive glass. Like their first shot defense again was fine. It was fine. I've talked about this for 2 weeks. If they would have cut Vanderbilt's offensive rebounds down from 17 to 6 and cut their second chance points from 18 to 6, you win the game. Defense would be fine. You would have given up about 70 points. But you can't because you don't rebound. So it was, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I was really disheartened when I walked out of the PMAC on Saturday. I thought, they did a good job in the non-conference. We knew there were some issues. Reed going down really hurt, but they needed to win this game. 1, because it's a 1 in the win column instead of the loss column, and 2, because it proves that you can go out there against an SEC team and win. And I think Vanderbilt is one of the bottom 4 teams in the league. I still do. I did on Friday. I did on Saturday. I did on Sunday. I do today. I think they're one of the worst 4 teams in the league. And they came to your building and beat you by 8. That is disheartening. And then there's another element to this that 4 of their next 5 are on the road. The next 2 are on the road. You had a decent crowd. You're trying to get some interest in basketball from Baton Rouge. That's hard to do. It's a tough sell. It's a year where there's now expectation for the first time in 3 years, and it just fell flat. And it's reasonable to suggest that the next time they come to the PMAC, they're 0-3 in league play, and you're just not going to get a bunch of interest on a Tuesday night at 8 o'clock with an 0-3 basketball team. So this was your chance to get off to a decent start, maybe to beat Vanderbilt. You could go on the road, maybe beat Missouri, who's, again, one of the bottom 5 or 6 teams in the league. And then all of a sudden people can start to think, oh, my gosh, they're 12-2, they're 2-0 in the league. And then you can start to build some interest in basketball around here. And I just think it fell flat on Saturday. I think that it was a multifaceted loss. And it's a bummer. I think they can get better. I still think McMahon's a good coach. But the point stands to reason. I watched the other teams in the SEC play, and I'm going to talk about them here to end this hour. In 15 minutes, we'll go back to talking about a little bit of basketball after we get to football recruiting. But I think he's a good coach. And I think he's doing a decent job at pulling guys in the portal and putting a team together. But I look at the rest of the league, and I can't help but think LSU is one of the bottom 4 teams in the SEC. And that is just not something I thought I would say in August. But then starting to watch the league in November and early December, it became pretty obvious to me. And I think I said it on this show. Like, it's hard to make that sell, because I realize most of you that are listening are like a lot of my friends. You're huge LSU fans. You certainly watch all the football games. You're locked in. You want the basketball team to do well. You love baseball season, but you're not going to be locked into basketball in November and early December. Certainly not when Ole Miss is playing, Mississippi Valley State and Arkansas is playing Tulsa. Like, you're not going to pay attention to a lot of that. And so for me to try to talk about some of that, it's just not what we want to talk about. We're talking about football at that part of the year. But I was watching a lot of weeknights these teams play, and I was peppering in a little bit here and there going, guys, this is going to be bumpy. And I've said that a lot. This is going to be a bumpy ride. I just thought they could get off to a better start than that. And I'm disappointed in what we saw on Saturday with LSU and Vanderbilt. But they can make up for it tomorrow. They can. Yes, Missouri beat Kansas, which is not super encouraging. But they're not one of the juggernauts in this league. They're not Tennessee. They're not Alabama. They're not Auburn. They're not Florida. They're not one of those teams. They're they're closer to LSU's class. So we'll see. Tomorrow we'll preview that game. But Saturday was a real tough one for LSU and for this program. So hopefully things get better in a hurry for the Tigers. LSU is going to welcome a couple of defensive backs to campus this week. I'll tell you who and how they might fit. That's next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Audio Video Security Solutions, avssla.com is that website. How's the Wi-Fi in your home? How's your ability to stream, whether it's on your phone, certainly on your smart television, smart devices? If that can be spotty at times, get mesh Wi-Fi installed at your home, thanks to the folks at Audio Video Security Solutions. My previous home was at this place where internet was just weird. I had multiple people come out in the early days around 2015 to try to help with Wi-Fi, and it was a struggle. And I didn't know Mitchell Fisher at the time. He didn't have a company at the time. Or I would have had him out there to install the mesh Wi-Fi and to boost that signal. But I do know that he's able to do that no matter where you are here in our listening area. So if home internet has just been an issue for you that you've been trying to correct and just haven't found the right remedy, Mitchell Fisher and his team at Audio Video Security Solutions can do it with that mesh Wi-Fi, so it can boost. You don't have to go to a certain corner of the house to use the internet on your phone or your iPad. Give Mitchell a call. It's his cell phone number, 225-439-7920. Again, 225-439-7920. You can always check him out online at avssla.com. It's Audio Video Security Solutions, avssla.com.
This is The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
December was a flurry of transfer portal entrants and acquisitions for LSU football, and things have settled down a little bit, but there's still work to be done for LSU, and I think there is potentially some significant work to be done for LSU. They're looking at the offensive line. They're looking at the back end of the defense as well. I think they're looking at tight end. And there have been some reports about some visitors that are headed LSU's way this week, specifically in the secondary. One of those is former Auburn defensive back Keontae Scott. Scott is going to use the Diego Pavia rule here, which is that he played 2 years of junior college football. He was a junior college All-American at Snow College twice, and those years don't count anymore. So he can play another year of college football if he would like. He played for 3 years at Auburn, started 23 games over those 3 years. He made 115 tackles, defended 10 passes. And when you look at Keontae Scott, he's got some versatility. And I think that's the name of the game for LSU as they continue to pursue these secondary pieces. You've got a number of guys you can move around. And Mansour Delane is one of them. He can play corner, he can play nickel, and he can play safety. Keontae Scott is another guy who's got a lot of versatility as well. And then you've got TaMarcus Cooley, who LSU is looking at from NC State, who is going to visit this week, according to the folks over at Matt Zenitz over at 24/7. Cooley redshirted at Maryland, transferred to NC State, had 30 tackles, a sack, and 3 interceptions this past year, much of which was spent at the nickel for NC State. He's 5'11", 205 pounds. And so I think if you're Corey Raymond and you're kind of looking at your cornerback situation, and then you look back at safety and see what you've got, I think Mansour Delane is a guy that is going to kind of go where he's needed. It is my guess. You've got out on the corner some guys that you feel pretty good about. You feel good about Jakeem Jackson. Ashton Stamps returns for what could be his 3rd year out there as a potential starter. DJ Pickett is certainly going to be at corner. And then you start to look at, okay, what does Javian Toviano do? What does Mansour Delane do? If you can pull in one or two of these guys, what does TaMarcus Cooley do? What does Keontae Scott do if you can get them in? My guess is, and I'm just kind of going based off of size and experience, if you did add TaMarcus Cooley to your team, he's the NC State product that started there last year. That's a nickel. And to me, that probably moves Mansour Delane back to safety. If you go into the portal and land some big-time safety that's 6'2", 220 pounds, and has started for 2 years of the Power 5, then I think Mansour Delane kind of fits back in towards the line of scrimmage, maybe at the nickel spot. I think that's the ultimate chess piece that you have, because you're not, those guys I talked about, you're not really going to move. I mean, Stamps certainly could move into the slot, and maybe that helps him. But I think that you're trying to find the best talent you can find and then make it work. Now, what I don't know is what promises were made to Mansour Delane. You understand this recruiting process, and I'm speculating here, but I think it's reasonable to speculate. You see all these guys in the transfer portal, and they're kind of looking for the best offer. And obviously money comes into play there, but playing time obviously comes into play there, and position comes into play there as well. And I don't know if they promised Mansour Delane he could do this that might improve his draft stock, or this is where he fit in best. I'd like an opportunity to play for LSU, for DBU, for Corey Raymond to play in the SEC. This sounds great. Wherever you need me, coach, I'm in. I have no idea. But as I continue to look at this, there doesn't appear to me to be one type of DB they're going for. They're taking a look at a lot of different body types, a lot of different positions, a lot of different experiences. Most of them are high level. You don't see them looking around. I mean, Jacksonville State was one place they looked, and you're looking for Poyser, and he was a true safety, and that's a guy you would have probably put at the back end. But at this point, you look at these two guys, and I think this is just a matter of we'll just get the talent in, and we'll figure it out from there. So I feel pretty comfortable in my assertion that if TaMarcus Cooley from NC State did come to LSU, he'd be the nickel, and that would probably move Delane back a level. I don't have the same feelings about Keontae Scott. You're talking about a guy that I think is probably a safety. He played a number of roles for Auburn. He did play some at the nickel. He did play some at the safety. LSU at safety right now, you're looking at Deshaun Spears, you're looking at Jordan Gilbert, and you're looking at Javian Toviano. That's kind of all you have at safety. So you've got to supplement that in one way or another, whether that's bringing in a safety or bringing in a nickel or a corner and moving a corner back to safety. That's really where this question becomes, and we won't have an answer until this dust settles. I'm looking at Sports Illustrated's reporting that Keontae Scott will be at LSU this week. As I mentioned, 24/7 said that Cooley is going to visit basically the entire SEC over the next couple of weeks. Ole Miss early in the week, then LSU Thursday, Missouri on Friday, and Kentucky on Saturday. So I got a feeling that LSU is going to stand up pretty tall against Missouri and Kentucky in terms of NIL funds and just general opportunity. When it comes to Ole Miss, you never know. That's a battle that LSU is probably going to have to fight significantly in the transfer portal era. The Rebs are once again kind of dumping their money in here. So we know that the Rebs have taken Sage Ryan in. Do they want to take TaMarcus Cooley in as well? we'll just have to see, but you can stay tuned for the next couple of days to see how all of that goes. There's one more transfer portal name that was reported today that LSU is potentially looking at, and it makes a ton of sense when you think about it. Donovan Green, who's a Texas A&M tight end, is in the transfer portal, and Pete Nakos of On3 is reporting that he will visit LSU at the end of this week. Donovan Green caught a touchdown against LSU 2 years ago in that win that A&M had against the Tigers in College Station. He has not done much of anything since that day. That team did not make a bowl game. He tore his ACL prior to the 2023 season. And then this past year in 2024, he returned to the team, but he was really mainly only used on the kick return team. He did not do a lot on offense. He only played in 2 games offensively. And if you're hearing that and you're going, are you kidding me? You're taking some kid who couldn't even get on the field on Texas A&M's offense? Well, hear me out. Donovan Green started 4 games as a freshman. He made 22 catches for 233 yards and a couple of touchdowns, including the one, as I mentioned, that was against LSU. He's also 6'4", 265 pounds. I'm not asking Donovan Green to come into LSU and to replicate Mason Taylor's production. I'm asking Donovan Green to come join a group with Bauer Sharp and Trey'Dez Green and J.D. LaFleur and be a 4th-year college player who weighs damn near 270 pounds that can get in there and block somebody. Like, that's what I need him to do. And it's not like he can't catch it all. This is not like moving Bo Bordelon out to tight end because you don't have anybody else. No, Donovan Green is a tight end who was College Football News honorable mention freshman All-America a couple of years ago. He can catch, but he's a better blocker, and LSU needs a blocker. Bauer Sharp's a really good athlete who can catch touchdowns. Trey'Dez Green's a freak. You can throw it in the red zone, 3rd down. We just saw it in the bowl game. And J.D. LaFleur's a big dude, but he's a freshman. This is the kind of guy that makes a ton of sense. I don't think you have to break the bank for Donovan Green, and that's now something we have to consider. It's not like recruiting of old where you just kind of felt like, well, we got to get the right guy. Now you got to think of it like a salary cap. There's X number of dollars that you have. You can't sign the number 1 player at every position unless you've just got infinite funds. The Oracle guy probably can, but LSU probably can. If you can get a 265-pound 4th-year tight end who can get in there and block some when needed and has made catches in his past, that sounds good to me on the cheap. And it feels like that probably is the case. I don't know who else is in the mix for Donovan Green. He's a Texas native, so this is pretty close to home. This makes a ton of sense, and I would endorse fully LSU being able to bring Donovan Green in. So we'll see how that shakes out. That's 3 visitors LSU's expecting this week. Portal is slowed, but it's certainly not come to a stop, and the Tigers still being very, very aggressive. If you're looking for LSU football news, you can find it on our YouTube page, Hunt on LSU. That's also available wherever you find your podcast. All football all year long. So you're talking recruiting, talking portal, all that is right there at Hunt on LSU. All right, we'll pause when we come back. What the league looked like in SEC basketball on Saturday. It was a little frightening. We'll talk about it next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. He's the best. Dave's fantastic to work with. Go look at his great work. It's right there at OneBathAndClosets.com. You can see pictures of the awesome bathrooms that they've helped to redesign and remodel. They have pictures of their customized closets. What a difference that can make for you in your home. A customized brand new closet. It's going to look great. It's going to function fantastically. And I can promise you this, David's not going to come back 3 weeks later and fix all the loose ends that were issues since the installation. Never going to be the case. They're going to do it right the first time and leave the competition behind. Brand new closets, brand new bathrooms, or small upgrades. They can do those as well. It's all online at OneBathAndClosets.com. Get that free consultation started today at One Bath and Closets. See them online, OneBathAndClosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Beck, did you get a chance to see any SEC basketball on Saturday?
Yeah, I texted you 207 points in one game.
LSU was the only home team that lost on Saturday, by the way, which is a bit of a bummer. But Arkansas, ranked 23rd in the country, came into Knoxville and got embarrassed. Calipari went to the microphone after and said, "We lost by 25. I don't know how it wasn't 40. Like I don't know." So Tennessee, quite scary. Auburn ran Missouri off the floor, as you would imagine, in Auburn Arena. Oklahoma went to Tuscaloosa ranked 12th in the country and undefeated. They gave up 107 points and lost by 28. So that's encouraging. Florida and Kentucky, I watched all that game. It was incredibly high-level basketball. I mean, incredibly high-level basketball. Florida was competitive. They fought, scrapped. They were undefeated coming into the game, but Kentucky made the plays late. I mean, you're talking about a Florida team that scored 58 points in the second half and lost. And that's because Kentucky, Kentucky's got a guy coming off the bench named Kobe Bray who just shot the lights out. He was 7 of 9 from 3 and scored 23 points. So just a dead-eye shooter. Kentucky, it looked very different than the Calipari teams that I've watched over the last 15 years. And in that it was very balanced. It wasn't overly flashy. All of their starters scored between 14 and 19 points, and then Bray came off the bench. But they scored 106 and beat an undefeated Florida team 100-106. A&M beat Texas by 20. Mississippi State beat South Carolina by 35. Chris Jans' team is 13-1. He's done a great job there. And then Ole Miss beat Georgia 63-51. Georgia was the one team, and I did not watch a lot of that game, but Georgia was the one team that I did watch, and I was like, okay, that doesn't look awesome. And Georgia's 12-2. They were 12-1 coming in. Everybody in the SEC's got a gaudy record. That includes LSU, who came in at 10-2. But Ole Miss kind of overwhelmed Georgia, who I think is just decent. But the point being, you look at some of the teams in this league, and the talent level is just drastic, and it was on display in a big way. And as I mentioned in the segment when I talked to LSU basketball a little earlier, when I watch Florida and Kentucky play, and then I turn around and watch LSU and Vanderbilt, that doesn't look the same at all, like at all. And I worry about that. I worry about some of the guys in this league and the talent and the physicality in this league. I mean, LSU let a 6'8" post guy just back himself right down to the rim and put up layup after layup on Saturday. Jalen Carey's his name. He came off the bench and scored 14 points for him. He's 6'8". I'm looking at guys from Florida that are 6'10", 6'11", and built and can score around the rim. It's just intimidating. And you look at what LSU's got coming up. At Missouri, who doesn't look great, but then you're at Ole Miss, then you've got Arkansas, then you've got at A&M, then you're at Bama, then you've got Auburn. I mean, you don't play – Arkansas's not great, and you've got them coming up in the middle of next week on a Tuesday. But if you can't get that one, you don't have a home team that comes to your floor that you've got a real good swing against in the rest of January, because you got Auburn coming in here, and then you're on the road at A&M and at Alabama, who are all three of those teams, A&M, Alabama, and Auburn, are all in the top 10. So y'all have known this for 2 months. Like, I'm not breaking any news here, and I don't mean to just dump a bucket of cold water. But I'm also, and y'all know me really well, I am not going to sit here on January the 6th and go, all right, when's baseball? Like, what are we doing here? I'm not going to do that on January 6th. Nobody in this town is more excited to watch that baseball team play on February 14th than me. But we've got some time before we get there. There's 5 weeks before we get there. And I would like to watch some basketball, and I'd like to watch some basketball that matters. And the truth is that I can make a reasonable case looking at this schedule that they don't win a game in January. Like, it's not unrealistic. I think they will. But they really needed to win that game against Vanderbilt. And as I tweeted out watching Kentucky and Florida in the late morning, I was like, man, watching this game is not making me feel a lot better. And then you saw Alabama put up 100, and it just, Auburn embarrassing people. Tennessee is just so good on both ends of the floor. It's a little intimidating. I've said that a couple of times here, but Saturday reinforced it all, because it's one thing to watch the SEC crush some of the lesser known teams. It's another thing to watch them play, teams in the ACC. You're not sure if they're good or not, but then you get into league play and you see the talent and ability level that some of these guys have. It's quite a league. It's going to be something to watch over the next 3 months. Our Monday show is brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products, GCOPnet.com. All your printing, scanning, copying needs right there, Gulf Coast Office Products. Contact our guy, Trey Beal, in the new year. He will help you out, all your printing, scanning, and copying needs. We're going to step aside for Sports Center. When we come back, Pro Football Focus grades for the entire season. Who are the best 5, who are the worst 5 for LSU over the course of the year. Come back after Sports Center.
The Hunt Palmer Show.